Mosslight Ravine. Tonight we are going to walk through a deep green canyon where the walls are carpeted in glowing moss and water drips from stone to stone. The path is slow and easy, and we will look closely at the surfaces, the pools, and the small lives that move in the damp light. The entrance to the ravine is a narrow notch in the hillside, bordered by 2 cedar posts and a wooden gate that never closes. A sign lists the trail length and reminds visitors to keep to the boards when the ground is soft. There is a temperature change as soon as you step in. The air is cooler by several degrees and smells like wet leaves and clean stone. The ceiling of trees filters the evening light into a pale green wash. A thin stream crosses the path and disappears under the planks with a faint gurgle. The first wall rises on your left, dark rock banded with lighter seams, all of it beaded with moisture. Every seam holds moss in thick cushions that push out like the backs of little animals resting. Threads of water creep down the face in separate paths, joining and splitting without hurry. When a drop reaches the plank edge, it makes a soft tick, then another, then another. A steady metronome for your steps. The farther you go, the dimmer the sky becomes, and the wall brightens in return. The glow is soft, not sharp like a bulb, but steady and low, like a bed of coals hidden under leaves. The moss holds it close, leaflets lifting the light, the way scales lift a sheen on a fish. Some clusters are lime green, some are deeper olive, and some have tiny bronze stems that give the surface a dusky cast. You can see the structure of it, each stalk tipped with a wet point, all of them bending slightly toward the trickle that feeds them. The glow thickens where water is slow and the moss is dense, and thins where rock shows through. On one patch, thread-like star moss spreads in radial bursts, and each star seems to hold a dot of light at its center. Lichen shares the wall in flat shields, pale grey under the green, steady as old paint. When a wind moves through the canopy, the glow ripples with it. Not because the light moves, but because the wet leaves change the angles of reflection. A tiny gnat drifts close, and the green shows the shadow of its body for the second before it moves on. You stand near it, and your breath makes a faint cloud that briefly dims a palm-sized circle of wall, then clears again. The path narrows and turns along a shallow shelf where the canyon floor steps down into pools. Boards have been fixed into the mud here, so shoes stay dry. And each board gives a little under your weight with a quiet creak. On the right, the water is clear as glass and holds the colour of the moss, as if the water itself were green. Each pool has a thin skin on top, not ice, but a tension that smooths the surface until the smallest drip sends a ring moving outward. Under the surface, brown leaves lie pressed flat like pages, their veins white against tan. Small stones show through, some rounded, some edged, with thin coats of algae that make them look dark when they are wet. You can trace the route of last week's flood in a line of twigs stranded on a ledge, and in the way the moss is combed in a single direction. A twig bridge, built by last winter's storm, still rests against a rock, woven in angles that look deliberate. When a drop falls from the ledge above and hits the pool, the ring runs into the twig and makes the light bend around it. The sound is close to you, contained by the walls, so the whole place seems to listen with you. On a flat rock, halfway up the wall, a little black salamander sits like a piece of wet licorice, set down and forgotten. Its skin reflects the green in beads, and when it breathes, the bead lines slide very slightly. Its tail lies in a shallow curve, thick at the base, and tapering to a point that rests against the stone. When another drop falls near its head, it shifts half a body length, then stops, front toes spread and planted. A spider has made a web in the corner where rock meets root, and the web is studded with water, so each knot shows as a point of brightness. A snail crosses a film of water on the rock, leaving a thread that looks like a scratch on glass, until it blends back into the wet. There are flies here too, slow ones that hover over the pool, and dancers that skitter on the surface, each step dimpling the water with tiny cups of shadow. From deeper in the ravine comes the low note of a frog that does not care whether you approach or not. Everything seems to have a job that involves contact with water, and most of those jobs happen slowly. You reach a footbridge where the ravine narrows to a throat and the walls lean inward. The bridge is built from 2 peeled logs, with planks across, and the handrail is a simple rope that hums softly when you tap it. The timbers are dark with age and wet at the edges where drops gather. Stand on the middle plank and look straight down, and you can see a narrow chute where the stream lifts into white for just a moment. Under the bridge, foam collects in the pockets between rocks and spins slowly, like cream stirred by hand. On the wall beside the bridge, a fern grows from nothing but a pinch of soil and a crack, its fronds unrolling in tight spirals that still hold yesterday's shape. The glow is strong here, reflected twice in water and moss, so your hand is green when you rest it on the rope. A pale millipede follows the undersurface of the bridge beam, a string of segments moving in smooth unison, legs tapping like rain on a sill. If you stand quietly, you can hear the sound of a single drop landing far away, then the next, then a series closer to you, like a reply. A ranger once mapped this ravine, and her markers remain in small ways that do not crowd the place. On a cedar stake near the bridge, someone has carved 3 neat notches with a knife, each notch clean and shallow. A field pencil is tied with twine to a weathered notebook hung in a dry recess. and the pages inside are buckled but readable. One page records the flow rate on a day in spring. Another lists the first frogs of the year. And another is just a drawing of a fern frond that looks almost like the one in front of you now. You find a tiny metal disc driven into a boulder with a number stamped on it. And the number is nearly buried in moss, but still legible if you blow the water away. In a shady bend farther on, a narrow wooden ladder rests against a low ledge, braced by stones so it will not shift. The ladder rungs are slick but sound, and you test them with your weight before climbing. On the ledge above, a square of gravel has been raked smooth. No pattern, just flatness, as if someone needed a small piece of level ground to set down a pack. A coil of old rope lies there, thin as a vine and stiff with age, and a single oak leaf has cupped a pool of water that trembles when the drip finds it. The ranger may be gone for the day, but the order she made remains. Past the ladder, the rock changes from banded to blocky, and the wall presents shelves like short stairs. The moss climbs each rise in a close mat that wraps the angles and rounds them until the shelves look soft. Water smiles over the edges, not in a curtain, but in 100 separate threads that start and stop as the wind stirs the trees above. In the shadow of one shelf, a pale fungus has built a little city of caps, each cap with a smooth, damp top and gills like pages underneath. The caps push up through the moss in clusters, where an old root rotted and left food behind. In another recess, a colony of liverworts spreads like a green map. Irregular lobes pressed tight to the rock, with tiny cups that hold water. If you crouch, you will see the cups have rims that catch a bead, like a clear coin. A tiny beetle with a copper back navigates the rim, its antennae touching the water before its feet commit. The beetle circles, then climbs the moss wall as though on a thick carpet, disappearing into a fold that looks too small to hold anything. A side channel opens to the left, and the path follows it, because that is what paths do in good canyons. They bend to water and shadow. Here the ceiling drops, and the air is cooler still, and each breath feels like rinsing your mouth in a mountain stream. The glow gathers low to the ground, where the soil is richest. A soft radiance pooled at the foot of stones. High above, the real sky thins to a slot and a rough arch of branches. A long drip forms from a root hanging out of the rock and lets go every 20 seconds. Steady enough that you soon find yourself anticipating the second before the fall. The drop lands in a bowl-shaped stone, and years of impact have made a little pocket so perfectly circular you would think a human shaped it. The pocket overflows into a runnel that leaves the bowl, and the runnel has carved its own miniature canyon with tiny banks and a sandbar the length of your finger. A water strider explores this little channel, making silver dimples with each footstep, then springs away when a leaf edge touches down. The sound here is smaller, detailed, like dozens of clocks with slightly different ticks. You pass a fallen log that has become a nurse to half the plants in the reach. The bark has sloughed away in long strips, and under it, the wood is red-brown and freckled with white mycelium. A row of hemlock seedlings stands along the spine like the start of a fence, each with 2 true leaves held flat and a stem no thicker than a match. Between them, miniature sword ferns have set their first fronds, bright and narrow, the tips still curled. In the hollows of the log lie pockets of black soil that hold more water than the forest floor, and each pocket reflects the mosslight in broken pieces. A wren slips through the growth and flicks its tail, then disappears into a cavity where the heartwood has gone soft. An old bracket fungus has set shelf above shelf on the log side, each shelf banded in cream and cinnamon, its surface slightly velvety under your fingertips. A centipede flashes into the moss like a wire being pulled, then is gone. When you tap the log lightly, dark springtails hop like pepper shaken on a wet plate, gather, then settle again. The main canyon returns in a gentle curve and opens into a chamber where the walls rise straight for a story or two. before the slope breaks. The floor here is a flat bench of stone, and the trail builders left it clean, as if they wanted to give you a place to stop without stepping off the rock. In the left wall, a seam leaks a continuous sheet of water, no thicker than paper, and behind it, the moss shines as though backlit. A small boy and his grandfather once stood here and cupped their hands in the falling sheet, and you can imagine it as you watch the surface bend into their shapes. On the opposite wall, a cluster of maidenhair ferns fans out in black-stemmed arcs, each light green leaflet holding a bead of water that rolls from tip to tip. The beads pop at the final tip and join the basin on the floor without leaving traces behind. In this chamber, your footsteps echo lightly, and a cough returns to you with a soft tail. Someone has stacked 3 flat stones into a short column in the corner, and water has traced a line down the face of that stack, painting it darker with a shiny varnish. The moss, undisturbed, grows right up to the edge of the stones, as if the boundary were of no interest to it. You move on and find a place where the path crosses the stream on stepping stones, spaced for an adult stride. Each stone has a dry center and a wet rim that shines like a ring. You place your foot on the first, and the stone gives back a faint chill through your boot. The water between stones is shallow and runs clear over pebbles that tick as they bump and settle. A leaf spins in a slow eddy that holds it in the same small circle, and where the mosslight touches it, the brown turns to green at the edges. A mayfly rises from the water, holds its wings like a sail, then rests on your pack strap for a heartbeat before lifting again. On the midstream stone, a little patch of moss has found purchase, a bright mound where a bird dropped something rich months ago. The mound holds 2 tiny sporophytes, like hairs, with capsules at the tips, and a drop perches on each capsule until the stream breathes and lets it slip. When you reach the final stone and step onto the far bank, the bank flexes slightly under your weight, with the spring of thick roots. Your footprint fills with water immediately and then vanishes. Now the ravine tightens again, and the boards become a narrow walkway, pinned to the rock with metal brackets. You can trail your fingers on the wall and feel grains, some coarse, some fine, depending on the layer. The glow here is right at eye level, and you can see the tiny teeth of the moss leaves, the way they press together, like scales on a small fish. Water runs in threads that cross one another and hang in loops from the undersides of tiny ledges. In places, the moss thins and roots grip bare stone in thin ropes that disappear into cracks. You can feel the pull they make just by their tension. A bat inside a crack opens one eye and closes it again, annoyed but not alarmed. Outside, a moth mills the air and bumps the wall, leaving a dust streak on the wet rock that washes away within seconds. The smell of the place is straight and clean. Rock dust, water, and the crushed green of stems. If you stop for a long minute, a pattern appears in the drips. 5 quick, 2 slow, then silence, then the same again. Like a quiet signal no one has written down. At a bend where no sunlight ever reaches, a lantern has been fixed to a post, its lens shaded so it does not dominate the mosslight. The lamp is not lit tonight, but it carries the faint odor of old oil that never truly leaves metal. Beyond it, a shallow grotto opens, and the roof comes down low enough that you could place your palm flat against it. The stone there is cool and holds an even film of water that shifts under your skin like a living thing. In the back of the grotto, a root thicker than your wrist hangs like a tether, its tip ending in a white brush that never quite dries. Beneath the root, a little terrace holds a perfect rectangle of moss, with sides so straight you want to know who made them, but you see no mark of tools. A tiny worm works the terrace surface, leaving a straight line behind that catches the light. The line fills with water from above and brightens until it vanishes into the general shine. The air in this pocket is still, and your breath rises in a faint plume that touches the roof and spreads thin as silk. Past the grotto, a long, shallow slope of rock serves as a slide for the stream. Too gentle to roar, too wet to allow dust. The water casts a moving net of lines on the stone below, a pattern that shifts as leaves move in the wind above. On both sides of this slide, mats of moss take advantage of every contour, spilling around humps and dipping into seams. Each growth front shows a fringe of new leaves lighter in colour, and there is a clear difference between last season's growth and this one. If you watch a single strand, you will see a drop gather from fog rather than fall, building slowly until it releases itself. The drop takes a meandering path, curves around a hair-thin root, pauses at a bump, then joins the sheet. A water spider tethers itself with a silk strand and lets the current swing it like a door on a hinge, then pulls hand over hand to a calmer spot. Where the water spreads thin, the stone shows fossils that look like small stamps. Half of a shell here, a fern outline there. The details are quiet under the green, part of the background, patient and complete. A level area appears on the right, a pocket meadow that never sees full sun but makes its own weather. Here the glow is gentle and even, and your eyes rest. A bench has been made from a single plank set on 2 flat stones, and the plank is rubbed smooth by many pauses. When you sit, your knees are nearly at the same height as the bench, and you can rest your palms open on your thighs and feel the damp without discomfort. On the ground in front of the bench lies a map of foot-sized pools, each with a different depth and therefore a different colour of green. A small thermos, dented on one corner, has been left on the plank end, and the lid is askew, so you can smell the faint trace of tea leaves. Beside it, a scarf the colour of wet sand has collected a line of droplets along its fold. A pair of tidy boot prints leads to the edge of the meadow and back again, as if someone came here only to look and then returned the way they came. From a branch overhead, a single drop forms, swells, tenses, then lets go and hits the lid with a soft tock. That sound repeats every minute or so and sets the rhythm for your breathing.